Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, February 2nd, 2022. That might as well be lottery numbers. Welcome to this How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, guys, to let you know that we try to be a family-friendly podcast most of the time. But things, like I said, for watching our language, words do sometimes fly. Also, there are things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Well, what do we start on this 2022 day? I swear it's lottery numbers. Well, not really a lot to get into in the middle of the week, but we're going to go ahead and get into it anyway. Starting first with Biden's next challenge, although Biden's kind of been 1 for 4 in the promises campaign, but he has, because of the openings that we now have the Supreme Court justice, he is following up on a promise of electing an African-American woman to the about to be empty Supreme Court judge seat once Stephen Breyer retires at the end of his term. That being said, again, it never ceases to amaze me that when we suggest a person of color gets admitted to a Supreme Court that hasn't had a person of color since its induction so many years ago, there's always going to be a few people who have a certain disposition to it. I wish I could make this up.
Battle now brewing over the next Supreme Court justice. President Biden, of course, promising to nominate the first Black woman to the court. Some Republicans now calling that offensive, the promise. And tonight, what Republican presidents have promised in the past. Ronald Reagan and his campaign promised before the 1980 election, and his argument back then that his promise was also long overdue. Rachel Scott on the Hill tonight.
Tonight, as President Biden narrows down his pick for a Supreme Court nominee, some Republicans are taking aim at his pledge to appoint the first Black woman to the bench.
The fact that he's willing to make a promise at the outset that it must be a Black woman, I gotta say that's offensive. It's actually an insult to Black women.
Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi comparing the president's pledge to affirmative action.
The irony is that the Supreme Court is at the very same time hearing cases about this sort of affirmative racial discrimination,
Yes.
and while adding someone who is the beneficiary of this sort of quota.
But neither of those senators objected when former President Donald Trump announced he would pick a woman to succeed Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
It will be a woman, a very talented, very brilliant woman. We haven't chosen yet, but we have numerous women on the list.
When Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1980, he too campaigned on a promise to make history, in his case by nominating the country's first female justice.
One of the first Supreme Court vacancies in my administration will be filled by the most qualified woman I can possibly find. It's time for a woman to sit among our highest jurists.
Of the 115 Supreme Court justices in American history, 108 have been white men. Only 5 have been female. A Black woman has never even been nominated.
He will choose and nominate someone who has impeccable credentials and is eminently qualified. There's no question in his mind that there is a wealth of qualified, talented Black women to choose from.
And a key Democratic senator says it's about time.
I don't look at it as being politicized. I look at it for being basically just a balance that needs to be gotten to represent who we are as a nation.
The president says this is long overdue, and some Republicans appear to be keeping an open mind, including Senator Lindsey Graham, praising fellow South Carolinian Judge J. Michelle Childs. She is on the president's short list.
Okay, so the problem I have with this, number one, this goes out to everybody. Hi, William Buchanan. Oh, podcast extraordinaire. We'll say this for the record. If you are a white person, you can never say what's racist, what's insulting to other people of color, and above all else, what you consider to be working only to include other people. That's the very same critical race theory that a lot of you people out there don't want your kids learning, that will never learn unless they go to the simple fact of the matter of going to a law school. The fact that you had two white men sitting there saying that, oh, well, a black woman being a Supreme Court justice, that's just offensive. No, it's offensive to you. It's not offensive to us. As the journalist piece said, over 115 judges have been elected to the Supreme Court. Only 5 have been women. None of them have been none of them have been a woman of color. The closest that we had was Clarence Thomas, and I'm not even sure about him, honestly. But it amazes me so that we are still in 2022 and we're still having this color barrier issue where you have individuals that will sit there and say, oh, well, you can't do this. And it's amazing that at this point that, yes, Biden does have 7 African-American women that he is considering. And it's been time. I have been saying this for a long time about the Supreme Court. The moment the fact of the matter is that the last time the Republicans had their turn at the wheel, they force-fed 3 Supreme Court judges in with blinding speed. And yet, when it's the Democrats' turn to elect someone to the Supreme Court, Republicans want to slow dance it. I wonder why, because right now the court is conservative leaning. Right now the court will basically rule in favor of most conservative ideals. So again, if you bring a woman of color onto there, yes, it brings balance. Will it still be conservative leaning? Yes, there will still be at least a 2-to-1 margin of conservative Supreme Court judges versus liberal and progressives. But has it been time for someone, a person of color, to be on the Supreme Court bench? Absolutely, been time. But it amazes me how old white men always see something as racist, offensive, or overall affirmative action. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. If you are those people, you can never call anything racist. Why? Your previous ancestors' history should speak volumes about that. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this next thing. Speaking of idiots out there, again, I always wonder how Trump is still allowed, aside from being free, that he's able to make crazy campaign promises. This one is no different, as he is literally sitting there saying, for the simple fact of the matter, that he wants to go after the how can I put this nicely? I don't want to call them rioters. They're not rioters from January 6th. They are basically white failed supremacists that tried to do a coup d'etat and are literally facing the price. Trump wants to turn around and pardon them. And you would think for all the Republicans out there, they would have something to say about this, including his cheerleader, Lindsey Graham. Surprisingly, says very little.
Returned to the campaign trail, so to speak, in Texas last night. It seemed like it. And during this rally, Trump said if he decides to run and is reelected to a new term as president, he would consider pardoning those prosecuted for attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
If I run and if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons because they are being treated so unfairly.
I think it's inappropriate. I don't want to reinforce that defiling the Capitol was okay. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do anything that would make this more likely in the future. I want to deter people who did what they on January the 6th. And those who did it, I hope they go to jail and get the book thrown at them because they deserve it.
So, Charlie, will that...
So I'm going to point that out for a second. Because again, Lindsey Graham, who was the biggest cheerleader, by the way, of Trump, is now saying, oh, well, they should be held accordingly to the law. And again, I keep telling you guys this. We are literally 7 months away from midterms. Lindsey Graham right now is doing what most people are doing at this point, which is we are not going to jump the shark. We're not going to rock the boat. Because scary as it is, Trump still can run the Republican Party if he's not in jail. I keep saying that. Like I said, it's a scary fact that this man, Trump, is biding his time till 2024 to where he can run again. If he's still out, if somehow he has dodged multiple lawsuits and he's still out and about for the world to see, you can bet your ass he's running. The scary part, and I say the scary part, he could wind up winning again because you see the idiots behind him. And trust me, yes, I said idiots. If you voted for Trump, you're an idiot. I am not going to miss my words on that because I debated many times and many people over people who voted for Trump. I said to people, I said this way, unless you're rich or you run a large corporation or a large business, then President Trump, then when you were under President Trump, it was a very good 4 years for you. As for the rest of us, we all got screwed. That being said, however, he is making outrageous promises again about going after the rioters, who are, some of them are facing minimal jail time. I think the most a rioter is actually facing is, I think, 3 years, give or take. And he wants to give them pardons. And the crowd eats it up. And that alone is scary, because those same people will be the same people voting. And like I said before, when Trump won, Trump only won because a lot of people didn't vote, which right now, as I've said before in the midterms, Democrats are going to have a harder time trying to convince people to vote for them again than Republicans getting idiots to vote for them, forgetting the fact that they had it rougher under Republicans than they did under Democrats. I've been saying that. But again, it amazes me so when it comes to Trump that he is still allowed to be out there and say whatever it is he comes to mind, because as long as he gets the crowd, as long as he gets that show of admiration, he's going to keep doing this. And that is a scary ass thought. Because keep in mind, a lot of us, when he first ran a long time, well, which seems like a long time ago, was actually 5 years ago. Remember when he ran 5 years ago and we thought he didn't have a chance in hell? Yeah, nobody's laughing now. But again, we'll follow that as it comes along, because no Republican has came forward and spoke against Trump. They're not going to go against the pack. And Republicans have a pack mentality when it comes to that. But also another thing I wanted to point out was that in the Ahmaud Arbery case, thankfully we did get convictions of pretty much life without parole for 2 and life with parole for 1. But Audacity must have been on sale today, because that father and son tried to do a plea deal that was rejected by everybody.
It's 2 of the men who murdered Ahmaud Arbery. A federal judge rejected a plea deal on hate crime charges against the father and son convicted in the killing. Steve Ososame is back with the details. Good morning again, Steve.
Good morning to you, Michael. In a statement, the U.S. Department of Justice says that they ran this rejected plea deal past the Arbery family before their prosecutors argued in support of it in court. The family says they never agreed to it.
We want 100% justice.
The family of Ahmaud Arbery is thanking a federal judge this morning for listening. Judge Lisa Godby Wood is refusing a plea deal before next week's trial that would have kept Travis McMichael and his father Gregory out of a state prison and into a federal one for much of the life sentences they received at state trial in November. The 2 and their neighbor were all sentenced to a life in a state prison for murdering Ahmaud Arbery on a tree-lined street nearly 2 years ago. The rejected plea, which was agreed to by prosecutors, would have allowed the father and son to spend 30 years of their life sentence in a federal prison.
I think that they wanted to go to a federal prison because they felt it would be safer, and those prisons tend to be a little bit nicer.
I fought so hard to get these guys in state prison. Very disrespectful.
It is rare for a federal judge to reject this kind of plea agreement. The Arbery family attorney says it's because the family spoke up.
What the family was trying to impress upon the court was that the conditions of their confinement must remain in state prison where they have been sentenced to serve the rest of their lives.
If they change their plea back to not guilty, all 3 murderers will be prosecuted for allegedly targeting Ahmaud Arbery because of his race. Jury selection begins Monday regardless. So far, William Roddy Bryant, the 3rd man who was convicted of murder at the state trial, he still faces federal trial on Monday. We'll find out Friday if the other 2 men join him.
So again, it was crazy that they tried. And the people, and for a lot of people are wondering, it's like, well, why do they want to choose to, go to a federal prison? Basically because it's safe, because they're basically trying to make sure they're safe. Because let's be honest, people like that don't make it in prison long. Mostly because, prison kind of has that prison mentality. Like, if we know what you're in here for and we know who you are, chances are you don't make it that long. But again, I feel like I completely agree with the Arbery family that no, you got the sentence. You pretty much will not be seeing the light of day once you go in. And there's still a hate crime case that's still being looked into, because why else would the reason why in the world that they would be targeting a young black man? Because again, that alone should speak volumes. And yes, there should be a heavy penalty for basically a racist killing. So I don't feel bad for them. I'm just going to say, don't drop the soap while you're in prison. But moving right along, guys. Again, I know being February, it's Black History Month, although we got the shortest month of the year. That's kind of bullshit. But hey, hold on discussion. That being said, what's so crazy is that why on Black History Month or during Black History Month do we turn around and we get stuff like this?
News this morning, a new bomb threat reported at Howard University. Kenneth Moulton is there with the latest on the FBI investigation after multiple threats target at least 6 historically Black colleges and universities. Good morning, Kenneth.
Good morning, Michael. Howard University and 5 other HBCUs dealing with bomb threats this morning. It's the third one in a month for Howard. DC and campus police locking down this historically Black college and university, which has gotten the all clear. The FBI and ATF are investigating these bomb threats made to at least 6 HBCUs this morning, yesterday, and weeks earlier. Bowie State in Maryland, Bethune-Cookman in Florida, Delaware State, all targeted. Authorities found no explosive devices, but of course the threats locked down campuses and canceled classes. Federal and local investigators have not gone into a potential motive here, but officials at these schools say it's clear they're being targeted for being historically Black institutions. Members of Congress have already asked the FBI for more information about these bomb threats.
So again, that's crazy. Again, during Black History Month, I'm like, Audacity must have a fire sale. That's all I can sit there and say. Audacity must have a hell of a fire sale going on, just because the fact of the matter is just that, why are these HBCUs being targeted? I mean, when I'm like, I think back to the church bombings back in the 50s and 60s. I think about the Tulsa Massacre, which again, we know exactly who was behind that as well. We know it's like white mobs are behind all of this. So you would think in 2022 that now bomb threats are being called in. My mind immediately flashes back to that. It's like, it is amazing that folks will have the unmitigated gall to sit there and cause harm, simply put, because, yeah, they're racist. Now, of course, I want to follow that story because, like I said before, it's still an ongoing thing. So if you're at these HBCUs, please be safe because, again, as we've seen, folks out here are running on large amounts of audacity and not enough act right, in my opinion. But moving right along, guys, I also want to cover this as well. If you've been following Spotify and if you have stock in Spotify, I feel sorry for you, considering the fact that the stock price for Spotify has fallen, mainly put because their stance on Joe Rogan. For all those that don't know, Joe Rogan does have a deal with Spotify worth $100 million. His podcast, Joe Rogan Experience, has millions upon millions of subscribers that stream his podcast on Spotify. And for all those that know about Joe Rogan, he has, well, he likes to say that he is promoting thought or trying to ask questions that don't want to ask the questions that need to be asked, but everybody's scared to be asked, to have those conversations. The problem is he has been spouting from his podcast misinformation, even more so that it has gotten to the point, like I reported in my last podcast last week, that some recording artists who have their music on Spotify was pulling it, since Spotify has refused to actually take down the podcast from Joe Rogan Experience, or at least limit what is being said on there, which has caused massive stock prices on Spotify to fall. That being said, Joe Rogan has came out with the video, and Spotify has issued a new advisory content. Like I said, you can't make this kind of stuff up.
The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation.
Joe Rogan, one of the world's most successful podcasters, is finally addressing his latest controversy.
Hello, friends.
Responding in this nearly 10-minute long video posted to Instagram.
I'm not trying to promote misinformation. I'm not trying to be controversial. I've never tried to do anything with this podcast other than just talk to people and have interesting conversations.
The reason?
Because I'm still in love with you.
76-year-old Harvest Moon singer Neil Young, holding Rogan's and his employer Spotify's feet to the fire for allowing the host and his guests to spread what Young says is rampant misinformation about COVID-19 and the vaccine. The rocker threatening it's me or him, eventually pulling his music from the platform. Young's protest echoing the detailed objections made by 270 experts in an open letter to Spotify, published in early January.
Neil Young is one of the all-time iconic singer-songwriters in rock history.
He was known for protest music.
Yeah. And he is very principled. He is almost the definition of an iconoclast, but his protest history, his history of speaking out goes all the way back to the 60s. In 1970, after the Kent State massacre, I'll call it that, where students were shot by National Guardsmen, students who were peacefully protesting, he wrote a song about that called Ohio, 4 Dead in Ohio.
What if you knew her the ground.
So yes, he has a long history of stances.
But Rogan's popularity cannot be understated. His flippant attitude and irreverent curiosity have earned a cult-like following with an estimated 11 million listeners per episode. In May 2020, he landed an exclusive deal with Spotify worth more than 100 million, one of the first of its kind for the medium, catapulting his show to the #1 podcast in the world, even attracting celebrity fans like Aaron Rodgers, who says he consulted Rogan about alternative COVID treatments during an appearance on the Pat McAfee show.
I've been doing a lot of the stuff that he recommended in his podcasts and, on the phone to me.
Rodgers is one of the several highly influential athletes accused of sidestepping the world's public health efforts in combating the coronavirus. He remains unvaccinated. Now musicians, medical professionals, and podcasters alike are standing by Young, saying the tech company should bear some responsibility for its content. Spotify responding to the criticism. In an open letter, CEO Daniel Ek writing in part, "It is important to me that we don't take on the position of being content censor, while also making sure that there are rules in place and consequences for those who violate them."
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Rogan is also known for promoting the drug ivermectin on his show, The Joe Rogan Experience, despite FDA warning that it's not been shown to help with COVID-19 in any rigorous studies and may be dangerous.
I think specifically, a lot of times on Joe's show, they encourage the wrong thing, and it's disingenuous and dangerous at times. And we felt like we had no choice but to stand with Neil.
Guitarist Nils Lofgren of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, pulling nearly 27 years worth of his solo work off the site.
I hope that there'll be a dozen or so huge artists, young and old, that join us.
Young's longtime friend, Joni Mitchell, also pulling her music from Spotify, saying irresponsible people are spreading lies that are costing people their lives. Harry and Meghan, who themselves landed a multi-million-dollar deal with the platform, also expressing concerns. Spotify announcing they're now working to add a content advisory to any podcast episode that includes a discussion about COVID-19.
These companies are businesses. Spotify is probably doing the least risky thing possible by saying, well, we're going to keep Joe Rogan, but we'll certainly provide warnings or avenues where people can gather more information if they want to get it.
Spotify now joining other online platforms like Facebook and Twitter, who have made changes in response to the growing wave of misinformation.
Companies don't have to do this. There are 3 reasons that companies might want to do this. Number 1, they would say it so they can do the right thing. Number 2 is because they're getting a lot of pressure to do it. And number 3 is, I think a lot of these companies are concerned that if they don't do more, that they could end up getting regulated more by the government.
While Spotify's market value dropped by more than $2 billion over the weekend, following Rogan's apology today, the company's share price actually rebounded.
I think people were looking at the long-term damage, the potential for long-term damage, because when Neil Young removed his music, people were just like, oh my God, is everybody going to follow him? Well, so far, there doesn't seem to be a big rush for the exit.
Do listeners on Spotify hold any power here, holding Spotify's feet to the fire?
The only way that listeners can vote to protest is to leave. And I don't know if they've released numbers of how many people have canceled subscription, but that is all listeners really can do, except make noise on social media. And boy, are they doing that.
Okay, so literally and figuratively, businesses don't have morals. I mean, keep in mind, guys, for all those don't remember, you guys remember Rush Limbaugh? I mean, for guys who are, people my age and older, you probably remember Rush Limbaugh, the guy with the golden microphone that talked all sorts of BS and things of that nature, true shock jock reform and all that stuff. And remember, it's like there was such a campaign to bring him down. I mean, sponsors had to be pulled, radio stations, TV deals had to be canceled, stuff of that nature. He finally went off the air eventually. Same with Bill O'Reilly. Same with Same with a lot of people that were seen as controversial. Opie and Andy off Sirius XM was also another show that got pulled. But here's the thing about Spotify. Spotify knows that Joe Rogan right now is a cash cow. One of my favorite wrestling personas, Eric Bischoff, had this saying that, again, sticks with me to this day. Heard it when I was 12 years old, stuck to me this day. Controversy creates cash. Joe Rogan is a controversy. He simply puts stuff out there for the world to see. He puts out, oh, I've done ivermectin, which again, ivermectin has been treated in humans for other related issues. The problem with that is ivermectin that is being sold and farm and in most feed, seeds, and 4-H areas are for farm animals. That dosage that you find for a farm animal on those shelves is 100 times more than what a human's supposed to take. That's what he's taking, and that's the problem. Which again, he's not sitting there stating that. He's saying, oh, I've done ivermectin, I've done monoclonal treatment, I've done this, I've done that. He is basically saying from his platform, this is what I've done because I don't take the vaccine. And that alone is a scary thought, because just like this show, it's a platform. You know, for my platform, what I do is, as you guys can see, I pull articles from reputable news sites. I don't pull things out of my butt. I talk about those things from a scientific and factual standpoint. From that platform, that's my responsibility to show the content that you can find and reference, and you can sit there and say, yeah, this is what Will was talking about, because I put it out there for the world to see. Joe Rogan doesn't do that. He simply sits there and says, well, I'm just having a conversation. No, you're not. You're not having a conversation. You're simply sitting there, and like that's why I sit there and say I get mad about that, because Joe Rogan has a responsibility to actually tell the truth. He can't. I mean, it's almost like if he says the wrong thing, he loses subscribers. That's the part I don't get. It's like, why not be honest? You just don't want to take the vaccine because you feel somewhere down the line it's bad for you. You think you know better than doctors and researchers and medical personnel. You think you know better. Why not just say that? Because a lot of people out there do. A lot of people out there who are unvaccinated still sit there and say, I don't trust us in the vaccine. And I always say this, and again, this might change your opinion of me. This may not. I've always sat there and said it best. The same person, the same doctor who tells you get a vaccine and you don't get it, is that the same doctor you're going to go to the hospital when you're sick? So you won't trust him when you're well, but when you're on death's door, then you're going to listen to everything he says. That alone should tell you exactly how stupid that argument is. Because again, when it comes to information, folks go where they feel comfortable. Like, I like to think that people come to my podcast to listen to a logical perspective, but also listen to the news that you normally may not see or skip or not even watch. I would like to think that, because that's what I like to talk about. However, with Joe Rogan, he just talks about how we can say this, a different view. Yes. Is it stupid? Absolutely. Because he doesn't bring on medical personnel. There was actually one show where he actually got fact checked by another host because because the actual facts didn't agree with his perspective. So when they don't agree, when the facts don't agree, when he tried to use them, he questioned the source. Because that's what most folks do when they don't want to admit that that's the beautiful thing about science. It's true whether you believe it or not. That's the one thing about numbers. They're true whether you believe them or not. Whether they fit your narrative or don't, you still have to acknowledge the validity of it all. And Spotify is not going to do anything as long as Joe Rogan is still bringing them money. And that's the thing. Enough people haven't unsubscribed from Spotify. Enough people haven't stopped listening to Joe Rogan. Enough people haven't canceled. Haven't done enough to where Spotify is going to go, how do we keep our profits? Because keep in mind, any artists on Spotify will tell you that you literally have to get close to about 100 to 1,000 streams to get something decent, while the CEO brings in billions of dollars. Artists who put their music on Spotify have to literally get their streams to over 1 million plus to actually come out with a decent return. Don't believe me? Ask any artist. Spotify is not just for music people. I mean, anybody who makes music can upload to Spotify, but the streams alone, because again, this is how the music industry works. We went from tapes. Vinyl's still in. Vinyl will never go away. But we went from vinyl to tapes to CDs to MP3s, and now we're to streaming. So again, any artist out there will tell you Streaming is where it's at. You've probably seen your favorite artist say, you know what, guys, play my stream. You see Meg Thee Stallion, City Girls, all of them say that. My new single's out, guys. Listen to it, stream it, run it. They don't say that for promotion. They say that because that's how they make money. And Spotify gets a nice little percentage of that money. So again, going back to the original point, how in the world do we stop? How in the world do you want to stop Joe Rogan, or at least get him to right the ship? Easy. You hit a corporation where it's easy, but it's also difficult. You have to hit a corporation where it hurts. The bottom line, until Spotify actually starts losing money, they will continue business as usual. Joe Rogan will still continue business as usual. Idiots that follow him will still not get the vaccine, and will still be at square one wondering how this person is allowed to talk. Because again, there's nothing wrong with freedom of speech. I've said this all the time. Freedom of speech is great to say whatever it is that you want to say, but it does not absolve you from the consequences of what you say. I mean, that's the one thing I always tell people. You can say whatever you want to say, but you're not absolved from the consequences of those words that you say. And that's like, don't believe me? Ask Whoopi Goldberg right now. Whoopi Goldberg right now is currently suspended from The View because she said something that was factually incorrect about Jewish people in the Holocaust. That the Holocaust was not about race. And you saw how quickly she turned around and apologized, but you also saw how quickly they took her off air. Why? Because again, you keep a person on there that said something like that and they're still watching, people are going to turn off. Viewership drops, sponsors may pull out. And again, nothing hurts a company or corporation, nothing like losing money, especially when lots of it immediately gets cut off. So again, until Spotify wises up, Joe Rogan will still be allowed to operate however he wants to. And that alone is a scary thought when you got people out there that blind, I'm going to say blindly, that openly spout misinformation and call it alternative thinking, because that's bullshit. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this next last story that we got about the bail system. And I keep saying this, that one of the ways of us refining justice is to look at the cash bail system, because I still say the cash bail system is an ineffective use, especially for people with low-level crimes, like, not anything short of murder, really. But there may be an actual process to finally start moving the direction to where we can finally get rid of the cash bail system. But again, I've got concerns.
Issue of bail reform getting more national attention, from President Biden to New York City's mayor. Some arguing the system as it stands now doesn't work. But there's a range of opinions on how best to treat people fairly while keeping dangerous criminals off the streets. ABC's Zachary Keesh has more.
A national discussion is intensifying this morning over the issue of bail reform. It's all part of the president's plan to stop the overuse and misuse of jails and reform a criminal justice system that has unequally punished the poor and people of color. But former police captain and current mayor Eric Adams sees it differently. He believes judges should take into account the dangerousness of the suspect and whether or not they pose a threat to the community when deciding bail.
We need to reform a broken system. And what I'm saying to them, there are parts that we need to tweak.
Some say a 16-year-old boy charged with shooting an NYPD officer earlier this month, who was released on bond Thursday, is a glaring example of the problem. According to the Times Union, in the year after New York banned detained people on a wide range of criminal charges, nearly 100,000 cases saw adults released for offenses a judge could have previously set bail or ordered them held in custody. About 1% of the cases involved people who were rearrested again on violent charges involving a firearm while the initial case was pending. It's been an emotional week for the NYPD. Thousands lined Fifth Avenue in Manhattan to honor the life of Officer Jason Rivera, a 22-year-old rookie.
That same week, as we were preparing for a funeral for one of those officers, a man who shot another police officer in the Bronx, 16-year-old guy, is let free on bail. What does that send to the rank and file of the NYPD?
It's not just in New York. In Milwaukee, police say the man accused of opening fire on one of their own officers this past week was out on bail at the time of the shooting. And it's not just shootings. Police in Los Angeles say they're fighting a losing game of catch and release. After a string of violent smash and grabs in December, 14 suspects were arrested. Not one suspect spent more than one day in jail.
The vast majority of crime is committed by relatively few people. And when the few people are constantly gaming the system to understand its weaknesses, The system needs to protect all of communities from those individuals.
Proponents of bail reform insist the system disproportionately targets the poor and minority communities.
The only thing the bail reform laws did was make it clear that we should not be locking up people charged with low-level offenses and doing so to compel dispositions to keep the criminal legal system moving down the track, so to speak, and to keep things soft judges' dockets and ultimately to criminalize populations of color.
The president will be in New York this week to discuss the administration's plans on how to curb gun.
So again, I've always said about the cash bail system. I said before that the cash bail system itself is really populated against the simple fact of the matter of targeting low income. Like, for example, if you are in bail, of course, anybody who's ever been in the bail system, anybody who's ever, had to use a bail bondsman or had to, get yourself out of jail in some cases, they already know that really for low offenses like petty theft, things of that nature, really don't require bail because I think that's a low offense. Now, anything short of you harming someone, destroying a building or things of that nature, that requires bail. But again, it seems bail is put toward the more lesser offenses than it is the more major crimes. Now, again, I still believe that the bail system should only be set for more heinous crimes. I also believe that, we need to actually go back to these other states who have no problem issuing a $5,000 or $6,000 bail on something as petty as small larceny or grand theft. And they will do it because a lot of these people do not have a bail bondsman, or they do have a bail bondsman, or they do have a bail bondsman. Try saying that 5 times fast. Because they have to give 10% of the bond. Like, for example, most people don't have $100, $200, $300, $400, $500, depending on the actual bail set. And so therefore people are sitting in jails. And it could be a while, especially if you're in California, New York, it could be a long while before you actually meet your court date. So you're sitting in jail the entire time. It only benefits prison corporations that own prisons. And that's the only reason that I say above all else that, for the simple fact of the matter, that the cash bail system needs to only be used for major heinous crimes. Now, again, a lot of people say, well, it's not going to deter crime. How do we know? We haven't tried. Just like gun laws, we haven't tried. So again, it's a very interesting subject, but I still believe the cash bail system can only be used for major crimes and not for low level or petty theft. So, last thing I got, guys, before we wrap this up and get to our feel good segment, again, I know it's Black History Month, but again, I don't know what it is about February, but we always get stories such like this. And again, this is going to be a little hard to watch.
Detectives suspended and placed on administrative leave tonight in an announcement from Bridgeport's mayor. They're accused of mishandling investigations into the deaths of 2 Black women.
I am extremely disappointed with the leadership of the Bridgeport Police Department and have found the actions taken up to this point with regard to these 2 investigations unacceptable.
Lauren Smithfields and Brenda Lee Rawls found dead the same day in the same city. Now the families of those women are speaking out.
They treated her as if they found a body on the street with no identification or anything. That was very disrespectful.
Following their criticism and community demonstrations, the detectives Kevin Cronin and Angel Llanos now temporarily off the job and under investigation.
For lack of sensitivity to the public, for failure to follow police policy in the handling of these 2 matters.
Just 2 weeks before Christmas, Lauren Smithfields was found dead in her apartment. The family previously told NBC they were not notified by police within 24 hours and had challenges contacting the detective on the case.
He told me directly on the phone, stop calling me, and hung up in my face.
Right. Exactly.
It was just total disrespect.
Exactly.
According to a police incident report provided by the family attorney, the 23-year-old was found by a 37-year-old white man she allegedly met on the dating app Bumble. NBC is not naming him because he has not been charged.
We know that it was a Black male with a white female that was found dead at 23 years old. This person would have been a person of interest, and that didn't happen here.
The 2 families are now represented by the same lawyer, Darnell Crossland, the family preparing to sue the city of Bridgeport for its, quote, racially insensitive handling of the case. The Connecticut chief medical examiner ruled Smithfield's cause of death an accident due to acute drug-related intoxication. Now police say there's a criminal investigation into Smithfield's death. After the mayor's announcement on Sunday, the family called for more accountability, asking why the evidence the family collected at the scene, including bloodstained sheets, a sedative pill, and a used condom, was not immediately sent to the lab for testing.
I want an outside investigation. We want the Department of Justice to come in and do their own investigation.
On the same day of Lauren Smithfield's death, Brenda Lee Rawls was found dead at a Bridgeport residence, according to the family.
Did the police ever contact you regarding the fact that your sister had died or where her remains were?
No. We had to do practically our own investigation. This detective that was supposed to be on Brenda's case, I called 4 to 5 times. He never ever called me back.
The family says Rawls went to a man's house the evening of December 11th. They didn't hear from her for 2 days. When they went to his house on December 14th,
is Brenda there? And he said, no, Brenda passed away on Sunday. He claimed that he tried to wake her up and she wouldn't wake up. There was no scene investigation. His apartment, his house was not quarantined to collect evidence. We're not getting any answers from the police department.
Rawls' cause of death has not yet been determined. The detectives on leave, Cronin and Llanos, did not immediately respond to our requests for comment.
I mean, whatever happened that night, we want to know. And we want to feel like that they care as much as we care.
And Clay SMR joins us now from here at 30 Rock. Clay, what are you hearing from the police department regarding these ongoing cases?
Yeah, Gabe, the police department today told us these are, quote, active investigations. The city's mayor added that in addition to the 2 detectives currently suspended and on leave, one unidentified supervisory officer, quote, in charge of overseeing these matters, retired from the police department on Friday. Also, Gabe, I just got some late information directly from the family's lawyer. He tells me in Smithfield's case, they intend to sue for at least $30 million in punitive damages. No notice of claim has been filed in the case of Rawl yet, but he says that's something we can.
So again, guys, that's right there. I know it's like I said, why in Black History Month do we have this? Which again, it imagines the fact of the matter, guys, that you are literally and figuratively wondering what has happened to your loved one, and you get that type of response from law enforcement. And they said it best, accountability. We want to know what happened, and that the fact there's been next to nothing in traction on both those 2 women's cases. I don't blame them for suing the police department. I don't blame them for suing the city. But again, those detectives will have a lot to answer for. But the simple fact of the matter is, what exactly has been done? And if nothing can be accounted for it, then again, why are you officers? Very importantly, why are you detectives? Because it goes right back to what I said about law enforcement and minorities. You keep on wanting us to trust you, and we see stories like this, and I'm thinking to myself the entire time, this is the stories we hear from. We don't hear the other stories that never get reported, and that alone is a scary thought. But we will keep up with those stories as they go along. But again, guys, we're going to move on to our feel-good segment, because usually how the fact we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you want to lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it is Wednesday. Tomorrow's Friday, which is Thursday, so we're already over the hump and trying to get through the week. So I do think I figure we need to do one story of a good thing, and make you feel great, put a little smile in your heart, spring in your step. And I like this one because it's one of my favorite NFL players who's doing the one thing that a lot of NFL players do, when they were, famous and playful in college and went on to the draft. Jerome Bettis has figured the next course of his life is going back to school.
Back in school, Jerome Bettis, who powered through NFL defenses for 91 touchdowns and ran his way into the Hall of Fame, is once again at Notre Dame. You are Notre Dame class of?
Oh my goodness. Class of 2022? Wow, I didn't think about that.
27 years after he earned that nickname in college, he's here to finish his business degree, more than twice the age of his fellow students. What's it like to be back at school at age 49?
It is so strange because I'm so behind the times. I mean, I'm a dinosaur. I don't know where anything is. I'm struggling with the technology.
They take notes on iPads. He uses a pen and gets lost in new buildings.
I don't know which way.
But some things are familiar, like the frigid January weather.
Jerome, where are your gloves? I left my gloves.
4 courses from graduation, Bettis is just another senior. Sort of.
Everyone kind of knows who the boss is, especially at Notre Dame.
Bettis left Notre Dame his junior year for the NFL. A 1993 first-round draft pick for the Los Angeles Rams, he became a power-running icon with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a 6-time Pro Bowler, Walter Payton Man of the Year, Super Bowl champion, but not a college graduate.
Why is it so important for you to get that degree?
One, that I complete the task at hand. That's what I wanted to do. Also, I promised my mother that I would get my degree, but most importantly, I have 2 children. For them to see dad finish a commitment, I think it says a lot to them.
Are you a better student at 49 than you were at 18, 19, or 20?
I am a much better student at 49 because I want to learn. I want to know all of this information.
To put to work in his current businesses, trucking, staffing, development, and marketing companies, as well as a TV personality during the NFL season.
This week, this is the only thing that counts.
27 years later, Bettis' football scholarship is still good. Of the 21 members of his football class, 20 earned their degrees. Notre Dame President Father John Jenkins says Bettis will be the 21st.
I say to all our coaches that there are 3 things we should be concerned about. First is integrity, do things the right way. Second is help these kids get a degree and do well in their lives. And the third is winning on the field. And Jerome's getting a degree after all his success just underscores how important that is.
Back in the locker room where he first found national fame,
I was somewhere right in here.
Bettis shows me the traditions.
Now, the first sign, you've got to make sure that one, you just want to tap it because there we go.
Today, pursuing a different kind of glory with the same enthusiasm.
This is that moment where it's all coming together. I mean, right now, it's got me itchy.
Are you ready to go?
I'm not ready to go. I'm excited, though.
This May, he will graduate at Notre Dame Stadium, fulfilling the promise he made to his mom.
This is education related, and you can never take away the education.
Finishing one of the best runs of his life.
So that was actually pretty cool. I was before we had a Titans game, before we had a Titans team, I was a fan of the bus, still a fan of the bus. And like I said, education is important. If you are able to go back to school, trust me, you should be able to do so, especially with stuff like that. Like I said, Jerome Bettis made a promise to his mom to go back and get his business degree, which I believe he'll be finishing this year. So kudos to him. That did make me feel good to see, players that, go beyond their plans and just try to finish some future goals. I got some future goals, and like I said, I can understand Jerome Bettis. You kind of go through life a little bit, come back to school, and everything's different. That's how I felt for me. I mean, shoot, I'm gonna tell about myself. I started college at 18. And then had some 38. That tells you a lot. Yeah, so 34, 36, got my master's and got my bachelor's and master's degree. So that just goes to show you from 18 to 36, anybody can do it if you're up for it. So enough about my life. So anyway, that'll do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for watching. Before I do get out of here, some shameless plugging that I usually always do. I do want to start with my buddy Big BZA Dot, who will be resuming his podcast very soon. You can definitely find him, Avon Westwood, on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on all socials. We're usually at Smoking Trailer Sundays every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. The RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by World Star, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. But definitely check him out on Facebook at Avon Westwood on Facebook. And of course, Big BZA Dot on all socials. Also, shout out to RN Geek Present Geek Salad for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. You can definitely check them out on Facebook or on YouTube, as you're currently seeing right there. They are a bunch of podcasting guys I've met last year that actually cover everything as far as pop culture and the world outside of it. who are very intelligent, but definitely no filter, because me and Ari have definitely had our conversations. I look forward to having them back again on my Give It podcast very soon. But definitely check them out on Facebook and on YouTube. Just basically Ari and Gee present Geek Salad. Now, as for yours truly, guys, my IG handle that you're seeing in the lower left-hand corner, BlackBox447, feel free to follow me there. I usually post a lot of reviews, movie, video games, television shows, things of that nature. Some gym stuff, like I do a couple push-ups. At least I try to. Oh, that hurt, because that just usually I do a lot. I can motivate people. Black. So again, I'm just wanting to hopefully do it from there. Also, what's streaming at the bottom? If you copy and paste that in your browser, it'll take you to my link tree that has the Facebook and YouTube groups for all of my podcasts, how the Frack we got here, Get Bit, and of course the Awesome Nuts podcast. So definitely like, share, and subscribe, and let me know what you think. You know, if you like what you saw, let me know. If you didn't like what you saw, let me know. I still want to know what you guys have all thought about the podcast that I'm doing so far. Aside from that, guys, the last thing I'll say is, again, if you're not already, please get vaccinated. Please get both your shots and your boosters. Please wear a mask when you go out. Right now, the Omicron variant is out there, and it is aggressive, along with COVID-19, the rest of the variants. The only way we're going to get this down is we do what we should have done, what we've done with measles, what we've done with mumps, what we've done with all the smallpox, what we've done with pandemics in the past. We need to inoculate. We need to protect ourselves. Let's get numbers down, not only for the simple fact of the matter, to get back to some sense of normalcy. But keep in mind, guys, there are also people that still go to the hospital for life-saving treatments. Those that have kidney dialysis, blood transfusions, diabetic needs, and transplants. They are all being held up because a COVID bed is taking up that spot. If that is not a reason to help out each other, I don't know what is. So when you protect yourselves, you protect each other. That being said, guys, the last thing I'll say about how the Frack is persuade people, we're just to let them to a logical perspective in order to encourage you to go out and find it for yourself. We do a lot better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Madam Vice President, and hopefully very soon electing our first woman of color Supreme Court Justice. But here's the problem, though. We don't learn from history. We're doomed to repeat it. That's how Trump was able to become president. That's how our economy that's how our economy tanked. And above all else, that's what had us wondering how the frack we got here. That being said, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys really did think about everything we talked about so far. And like I said, look forward to see you guys on the flip side. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.